What's going on, Jerome's? Happy Monday. Sun still came up. Birds are chirping and stuff. And, new year. Hopefully new team. But the Vikings, 2023, it's kind of a year to forget. So the 2023 season was not great, as well as how the Vikings lost the Giants in 2023 as well. So just wasn't really great all the way around. But, what can you do? Like, where are we going to go? I mean, we Vikings fans have been through everything, and we're still here. We're still here, man. And, this season has been a whole season of woulda, coulda, shouldas. Yes, you can look at the injuries to Kirko and JJ and everyone else, right? And it's really tough and frustrating, especially the way that it started, 1-4, then 5 straight wins, including over the Niners, and then 1-5. Yikes. And we pointed this out a lot. And I know people are going to come into the comments, oh, you jinxed us, bro. Whatever. Hey, some guy, some random non-athletic Asian dude in his basement talking junk is going to jinx a multi-billion-dollar organization. Okay. Yeah, okay. But actually, maybe it's true. But yeah, we pointed out before the Packers game that the Vikings, all of their losses were by a single score and easily could have been won if a thing or two happens or they didn't turn the ball over. It wasn't going to happen against the Packers. And again, it's so gross. Just season on the line, you had your playoff destiny back in your hands with the Seahawks loss, and that's what happens, man. It's ridiculous. But we got 10 truths on Tell the Truth Monday. Number 1, no excuses for last night. And I know it's very easy to just cover things up. It's like, oh, with the injuries. Oh, with Kirko. Oh, with Jaren Hall starting. Oh, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. I think you have to go back to 38-7 or 40-3 last year, or a couple of the blowouts in the last years of the Zimmer regime to find a performance that was just so heartless and gutless. And it's just, as a fan, it's just so frustrating. And I feel terrible for fans that bought tickets for the holidays, Christmas gifts, Christmas Eve, and New Year's Eve, they're popular gifts, and just having those games, especially last night, nah, that's tough, man. But the most frustrating thing is, so we'll get to Jaren Hall, but everyone dogpiled on Jaren Hall. It's like, oh, he's so bad, as blah, 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 first half. When Nick Mullins came in, he wasn't much better. And again, this Joe Barry defense, they were missing their top 2 corners. The Panthers put 30 points up on them. The Vikings put up 10. The Vikings probably wouldn't have gotten a touchdown if Najee Thompson didn't have that amazing play on that punt. That's how pathetic it is. And also, it's just so. Also, the defense. I mean, how do you just get shredded? 87 points in the last 9 quarters and overtime. The 3 touchdowns on 3 straight drives against the Bengals, then whatever the Lions game was and whatever the Packers game was. And this after the defense really stepped up and was flowing and looking damn good. A big reason why the Vikings won 5 straight games, but man. But just, I just don't get it. Where this team, talent-wise, even with all the injuries, similar level to the greasy, grimy Green Bay Packers, but the whole thing is your season was on the line. You have your playoff destiny in your hands. You're at home, and you're playing against your most hated rival. You got Kirk Cousins blowing the Gallagher horn. And you play like that. Ridiculous, man. Number 2, 2-6 at home is embarrassing. So, again, just going back through these games, Buccaneers, 3 turnovers to 0, rough. Chargers game. The Chargers game was weird because Hockenson had that fumble early on, and then that final drive, and Hockenson literally had that one right in his hands that turned into an interception. Yeah, Chiefs game. Put your helmet back on. Then beat the Niners at home. Beat the Niners and Saints at home. Woo, it's awesome. Then losing to the Bears, which probably the worst game plan I've ever seen with Dobbs against the Bears, who, I mean, Justin Fields threw like 47 screen passes and they won somehow. And that was also the last time the defense looked really, really good, aside from the Raiders game. Great. And then losing these last two at home against division rivals, where you could have greatly helped your playoff chances. I mean, the Vikings, after the Week 10 win over the Saints, the Vikings were like 88% to make the playoffs or something like that. And then you lose 5 out of 6. So, yeah. Next up. But the whole home field thing is like the Vikings, the Vikings do have one of the best home field advantages in the league, but bit of a problem. It was noticed during the Chiefs game where there was a lot of red in the stadium. It was noticed during the Niners game, a lot of red in the stadium. And also Lions and the Packers, although Packers is always a little bit dicey, but season ticket holders selling their tickets on the secondary market, which, again, it's their prerogative. It's their property. They can do whatever they want with it. But all those tickets being vacuumed up by opposing fans and neutralizing a home field advantage, nah. Next up, number 3. The haters appreciate Kirk now. Because I know that Kevin O'Connell deserves a lot of credit and gets a lot of credit for the 13-4 last year, but it's pretty clear that Kirk Cousins covered up a lot of stink with this team. And Kirk was the guy holding this offense together. Last year the defense was garbage, and O'Connell didn't have the fortitude to make a change in season when Donishell was the problem. And I don't know. But I feel like for the last 6 years, a lot of Vikings fans have hated on Kirk because, he's mid. He'll never be top 10. He gets paid too much, all that stuff. But it's pretty damn clear that when Kirk got hurt, he was playing at a top 5 quarterback level. We kept saying he is MVP adjacent, and you saw what happened. The drop off in quarterback play after Kirk went down with his injury against the Packers. Now, yes, there were some great flash in the pan moments from Dobbs as well as from Nick Mullins, but overall the passing game was very poopy ever since Kirk went down. And you could roll the dice on trying to draft a quarterback high, or it can bring back Kirk for one last run. I do think that it is likely that Kirk is back. I think both sides understand that they need each other. I don't see Kirk going to another team and just starting over at 36 because he's built up so much equity here with this team in this locker room. But we'll see. But either way, I mean, Kirk certainly had his faults, especially early on in his contract. And also the first part of 2020 was probably the worst I've seen him play. But the last 2 years with O'Connell, he's looked fantastic. Let's call a spade. Number 4, you have to question O'Connell. All right, so going back through these, and so either injuries are an excuse or they're not, right? Or, the 1-4 start, everything else is a free roll. Either that is true or it's not. And with O'Connell, some of the game plan and play calling against the Broncos, and especially that last drive, cost the Vikings a win. The atrocious game plan against the Bears cost the Vikings. The Raiders, you scored 3 points. You scored 3 points, man. Yeah, but props to Flores and the defense for shutting down a team that scored 62 in the subsequent game. Was it 62? 63. Whatever. Either way, it was a lot. And then also the game management against the Bengals, the back-to-back tush pushes with Brandon Powell, the play calling in overtime too. I mean, that's... And then the Lions game, we all know about the Lions game. And, of course, the no-call, no-show against the Packers. Plus, with the decisions with the quarterbacks. So after the bye week, going with Dobbs again, you sort of understand it because, okay, even though Dobbs, after he got smacked by Kareem Jackson against the Broncos, he wasn't the same guy, and he was atrocious against the Bears, 4 interceptions. Again, not all of them were his fault, but also some passes that he threw that should have been intercepted weren't. And, that's true with every single quarterback with interceptions. It's an imperfect stat. But rolling with him against the Raiders, even though Mullins was healthy, but then replacing Dobbs with Mullins, and then Mullins getting the game-winning field goal. It's great. And then Mullins having an imperfect game against the Bengals, 2 interceptions in scoring range right before the half, and then 4 picks against the Lions. And then, all right, so if you were going to pull Jaren Hall at halftime when Jaren Hall wasn't great, but also he wasn't atrocious. Like, we're not talking about Nathan Peterman, 5 interceptions and a half bad, right? So if that was the plan, why not just start Mullins? Or why even bother starting Jaren Hall, who is a rookie, a 5th rounder, a guy that you still believe in his potential? Like, why give him that short of a hook in a must-win game at home? I don't understand it. Like, if that's the plan, why not start Mullins from the beginning? And also, let's not act like Mullins lit the world on fire either. Like I said, if Najee Thompson didn't have that amazing special teams play, the Vikings don't score a touchdown. But, I digress. But it is fair. Where I don't think the Vikings will, and I don't think that they should make a coaching change this offseason. But it's fair to say that Kwesi and O'Connell should be on maybe not the warm seat, but maybe not the hot seat, but the warm seat to start 2024. Also, what the hell happened to this defense? And again, you can point to injuries and whatever, but like we said, 87 points in the last 9 quarters and overtime. And you don't want to say like teams caught up, but Flores coming in with a very new style of defense, and eventually like teams start getting tape and a feel, and their tendencies start getting made out there, and this team is just giving up points. Just hemorrhaging points all over the place, and yards and first downs and third down conversions, and it's just rough. And yes, you could point to injuries. Jordan Hicks missed extended period of time. Marcus Davenport was healthy for like 2 seconds, and also Murphy being out was pretty significant too. But at a certain point, it's just like every team has injuries. Other teams are stepping up, and the Vikings aren't right now. And I still think that Flores deserves a head coaching job this offseason. But hell, maybe the Vikings' defensive performance the last couple of weeks will have him stick around. And just, oh my God. Number 6, the defensive line is a priority. And I love Harrison Phillips. He's been playing his ass off, but he's been playing out of position for years. We've kept freaking saying it. How do you not have size up front? And it goes back to, hey, should the Vikings trade down from 12? Oh, they passed on Jameson Williams. Oh, they passed on Kyle Hamilton. Jordan Davis should have been the pick, man. Pride of Georgia. There you go. But the Vikings in free agency and the draft must hammer the defensive line, right? Howard Cross III, Devondre Sweat, Javon Newton. Let's go. I mean, just rack up and stack up. Not only guys that have the size to hold the line of scrimmage, but dudes who can blow up a gap. Guys that can get their own pass rush. Because, I mean, how many players currently healthy on this team could get their own pass rush? Daniil. That's it. I mean, Pace has a couple of pressures, except he's not sent enough. Patrick Jones second had some flashes, but who is the guy that you can rely on to consistently get pressure by himself? Daniil. And Daniil had sort of no call, no show the last 2 games too. Next up, number 7. Cornerback is also up there. So, Murphy out, and Murphy's been a little bit streaky, hot and cold this year, but he was significantly missed in the last 2 games against the Lions, especially against Amon-Ra, as well as, Caleb Evans got picked on, and Mekhi Blackman got picked on, and also it goes back to scheme, where it just seems like since the 4th quarter of the Bengals game, they've gone back to the Donashell 7, 8, 9, 10 yards off the receiver, and play soft and don't blitz. And when you do get blitz, it gets stonewalled. I just don't get it. Super frustrating. It's super frustrating, especially considering how well they played in the middle of the season. But, next up, number 8. Jaren Hall he wasn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be. Yeah, everyone points out, well, Jaren Hall had 2 turnovers. One was a strip sack from the blind side. Darisaw got absolutely worked by Preston Smith. And the second one was, yes, it was an off-target throw, but it was a spot where, hey, if Munt could catch it, but Munt also didn't have to deflect it up in the air straight into the arms of the defender. All right, so that's where the interception was. But, I mean, Jaren Hall, he made a couple of nice throws, one to JJ, one to Addison. He did miss on that deep, skinny post, but again, I don't think that his play was bad enough that it warranted benching. I think that Jaren Hall was more of a scapegoat because O'Connell couldn't bench the entire offensive line that had given up 3 sacks, or he couldn't bench himself as a play caller. I think that's what it came down to. And like we said, going back to questioning O'Connell, like again, Jaren Hall didn't give the game away. I mean, the offense was stagnant. The offense was sluggish. I think a lot of it had to do with the offensive line as well as play calling. But I mean, if that was the plan, why even start him? Like, just start Mullins if you're just going to go out like that. Like, I don't understand why Jaren Hall, again, a 5th-round rookie making his 2nd career start, I don't understand why he was given such a short hook. It just does not make sense. Just start Mullins if that was going to be the case. Next up, number 9. It's fair to question depth. So getting into Kwesi, where, I mean, Kwesi's had some great moves. The Hockenson trade, drafting Addison, working things out with Daniil, 2 back-to-back off seasons, as well as, Josh Oliver signing was great too. But then you look at the 2022 draft class, you look at spending money on Davenport, and every team has injuries, but it seems like the Vikings are severely lacking in depth along the defensive line at cornerback and, I mean, quarterback, I guess. I mean, it's hard to go 2, 3, 4 deep at quarterback. Most teams don't. Most teams are just relying that their number 1 guy isn't going to get hurt. But I don't know, like it just seems like this team is deficient with depth in spots. And that's on the GM. That's on the scouting department. Lastly, we're on to Detroit. So the Vikings technically aren't eliminated. They have 4% playoff hopes. They need to win, and they need about 3 or 4 games to go their way. But the whole thing about it, too, is that Detroit could still potentially get the 2 seed. It's very remote, but if Dallas loses and Philly loses and the Lions win, they could go through like strength of schedule type stuff. But either way, like Dan Campbell doesn't seem like the type of guy who's going to rest his starters, especially given the way that the Dallas game played out. But whatever happens with the Vikings, put up the good fight. Don't get embarrassed. You draft where you draft, and you work from there. All right, but I mean, because if you go down and you wrap up this season with an embarrassing give-it-away loss against the Lions on Christmas Eve, an embarrassing blowout loss to the Packers at home on New Year's Eve, and then you just get schwacked on the road by the Lions, that's a sour taste that you leave in the fans' mouth for the entire offseason. All right, so the season has not been perfect, and probably not banking on the Vikings making the playoffs, but hold your head up high. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, because it's storming as hell, like hell right now. All right, and injuries are a factor, but there's going to be a lot of questions about this team going into the offseason. Will Kirk be back? Will JJ resign? Will Daniil be back? Who knows? Who knows, man? But that's it. That's at 10 Truths on Tell the Truth Monday. You guys are the best. Happy New Year. Skol. Production value.